It's a special edition of the podcast today. We're excited to welcome Dr. Rudy Ruiz, founder and CEO of Edifying Teachers. He's making a collective impact by loving and leading educators. That's next on the Educators Among Us podcast.
Welcome to the Educators Among Us podcast, where we share motivational messages and inspiring stories for and about educators. Your host, Scott Barron, is author of the critically acclaimed book, Love 'Em and Lead 'Em, and provides powerful insights and wisdom for those who heed the call to teach, coach, lead, and serve at all levels of education.
This is Scott Barron, and I'm honored to be your host for the Educators Among Us podcast. This is a special show because we love educators and we love providing perspective and encouragement and even a little bit of inspiration for those who dare to take on the challenge at all levels of education. We have people who are part of this program that are their staff members, they're teachers, they're board members, they're administrators, they're in the finance office, they're in the business office, they're in the fundraising office, they're across on the full spectrum of educators. And that's the exciting thing, of course, is that it takes a lot of different types of talents and skills to be a part of an education system. And sometimes we get to talk to some really special people. And I'm so excited to bring Dr. Rudy Ruiz to this conversation because of his experience, his work as an educator, and his story. It's really cool. And I'm excited that you get a chance to be a part of that. And again, we try to give you some insights and some people who they've been through it. They've been through the challenges. They've been through sometimes the heartaches and the extensive work that's required to be an educator, to walk that journey with other people. It's not easy, and it's not all about just being smart. We also have to be able to build relationships and be able to solve problems and resolve conflict and just navigate what comes with life and with school, right? And so, Rudy, thank you so much for being a part of this conversation today.
It's an honor and a blessing, Scott. Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. So a little bit of background. Rudy we serve together on the National Advisory Council for the Johns Hopkins School of Education, but he also serves as a founder and CEO of Edifying Teachers. Now, this is a unique program that he created to try to bridge national efforts, in supporting and retaining a diverse teaching workforce. And it's been a hard period of time for educators, and we've got some interesting data on that. But we know that this is a time where we need to be encouraging educators to stick with it. And people come from different backgrounds into this work, and so we try to build and strengthen those relationships, and that's what Rudy and his team are doing through Edifying Teachers. Now, Rudy also serves as the founding lead for the Ready Institute at the universities at Shady Grove, a very unique program there in Montgomery County, Maryland, where they're creating new bridges and new connections among educators. And it's a unique story. I'll let him tell you more about that. But Rudy, I'm so glad that you can share some of your narrative and some of the vision that you have for ways that we can encourage and inspire those who have the courage to educate. And that's a joy that we have a distinct passion for, because we know, of course, that, hey, educators are held to a higher standard, right? And there's a lot of influence that we have, and that means that we have to make adjustments. We have to figure out ways of meeting the needs of families while also being able to navigate our own journey in life. And so we're thrilled to have this conversation. So the first question that we always ask guests that join us, and we've had a chance to ask this question of educators all around the world, and it's so fascinating to hear the stories of this. But who was an educator that significantly impacted your life, and why?
Yeah, thanks so much, Scott, again, for the opportunity. And of course, a great opening question in here. I've had a lot of experiences in education, both as a student and as an educator over the years. As a student, I have had a chance to attend schools that include, as you mentioned, Johns Hopkins, being an alum. but also have been able to attend and have great experiences in public schools and private schools and parochial schools. And so as a young student in elementary school, I had the opportunity to begin my educational journey in my neighborhood parochial high school, or parochial school, pardon me, St. Joseph's over in my hometown of Milwaukee.
Oh, that's awesome. So how did you first get started as an educator? What was the original sort of inspiration for choosing that career path?
Yeah, thanks so much again for the question. So after growing up in Milwaukee and again having those positive experiences in the public schools from 3rd through 8th grade, I went back into the parochial school, mentioned again a parochial high school, in this case St. Thomas More High School, also in Milwaukee. And from there decided I wanted to really spread my wings and continue my education. Went out to the West Coast, so completed my bachelor's degree at Stanford University. Really just wanted to continue, my love for learning. My curiosity was around language, and so my degree was in linguistics. And so this was 25 years ago now that I was finishing up my bachelor's degree and was doing some early work at that time, not only being able to work from home, doing work on my laptop, but was actually doing some work to help computers sound more human. So speech synthesis work, 25 years ago. I thought I was very clever, emailing my work to this California company, and I said, wait a minute, Silicon Valley is very expensive, Milwaukee is much more affordable. All my extended family is in Milwaukee. Let me just quietly go back to Milwaukee, email this work to California, and everything will be great. And it was for about a year, and then they said at the end of the year, great job on that 1-year contract you had. Good luck with whatever you decide to do next. And it was through another great educator, my mother, who went back to school, and she and I actually earned our bachelor's degree the same year. So she studied education as an adult, and it was she who encouraged me, saying, Rudy, when you were at Stanford, you were a teaching assistant helping people learn American Sign Language, and you've always had a natural instinct and skill with teaching. Why don't you go back and talk with Milwaukee Public Schools? They could sure use an educator like you. And so that's how I began my career as an educator.
Wow. So what do you love most about that career calling?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think just a chance to really help, especially again, young people and others fulfill, really their God-given potential, helping them figure out, what is their purpose, what is their calling.
Yeah. And how about what do you like least about being an educator?
I think really, Scott, there's so many times where once folks get into the field, they face some challenges and they forget about, again, what called them into the field. They forget about that impact with the students and lose focus there. And so I think when that happens, that can lead to a lot of frustration, especially, among adults.
Yeah, that's very true, right? I mean, we actually share a program for some groups of teachers called Finding Serenity as an Educator, right? And so often in the work of education, there's so many things, as the Serenity Prayer says, right? Give me the ability to understand the things to accept the things I cannot change, and the courage to change the things that I can, and of course the wisdom to know the difference, right? And in education, man, there's so many things that we just can't control. People's behavior and other people's decisions and attitudes, and just the list goes on. And it gets frustrating. And we see, I don't know, and this may be part of the motivation of why you started Edifying Teachers, but there's a high rate of burnout right now. There's and I think there's a variety of factors. I don't think it's a single factor that's contributing to this, but certainly over the last 5 years, there have been more people who left the profession than in the previous couple of decades, right? And that exodus has had very significant consequences. This is particularly in the United States. It had very particular consequences on the quality of our schools and on the options we have to improve our schools, right? Because so much of the quality of a school is dependent on the qualities of the educators, right? And so I think your point about that is it's important to understand. Sometimes people who've never kind of done the work of an educator, they assume it's kind of like any other job. And I will tell you from having worked in business for about a dozen years before coming into education and then returning to business work, as an ed tech entrepreneur, people just vastly underestimate I think it's more of the emotional consequences that are in the emotional maturity and responsibility that's required of educators, and the toll that has on them.
Yes. Yes, there's so many different saying these days about the fact that, of course, despite its benefits, technology, has us more connected, while at the same time feeling more disconnected. And so I think, people really feel that when they aren't supported and part of a community. And, teaching's always been a relatively isolating profession. And so, we're trying to do what we can to connect folks and make sure that they are part of a community.
Absolutely. So edifying teachers. I mean, that's a very distinct word, edifying. You don't typically see that a lot, right? Tell me, why did you choose that name, and what's the underlying meaning?
Thanks, Scott. Yeah, you talked about the fact that many folks, including myself, came into the field through alternative pathways. More and more, we're having folks who are underprepared, need greater support in terms of developing their instructional skill set. But too often we're overlooking other aspects of what it takes to not just survive in the field, but to thrive as a professional and as a person. And so in thinking about reasons why folks are leaving the profession, we really want to make sure that the support that we're providing not only does develop instructional skills, but looks at people holistically and provides holistic support. And so when we say edification, we talk about our mentors as edifiers. We want to make sure that in each session that we provide, and every engagement, that we're making sure to think about and ask and address, what does support look like for you in this moment? Because we know, life in this world is challenging, and we want to acknowledge folks in their full humanity.
Yeah, absolutely. And their full humanity. Yes, indeed. All right. So you have, how long ago did you start edifying teachers?
Yeah, it's a great question. We're still, it could be considered a startup for sure. So a few months before I completed my doctorate, I'm coming up on my third anniversary here in a month. So several months before that, I said, as I get ready to publish this dissertation, I don't want it to be a book on the shelf. I think this is important work. I think it needs to make a difference in the field. And so I started launching Edifying back in November 2021, initially just as through social media, basically saying, let's have some conversation nationally. And as the conversation built, and I finished my doctorate, I said, you know what, let's see who's out there in the field that would want to be involved in mentoring, and let's get to work. And so in the fall of 2022, we started working with one school partner, and now we've had a chance to have an impact as of last week, now in 4 states.
Oh, how about that? That's awesome. All right. So, I mean, as an entrepreneur in this space, I can tell you over the last 14 years, I have learned so much. There were so many assumptions I came into this with. It was like, oh, that was not correct, and I had to make some adjustments just because, there's so many factors changing in education now. Right. What have you learned? So it's been 4 years, right? So what have you learned over that time about schools, or even about yourself, about even serving educators and schools through that journey?
Yeah, Scott, I think always on the lookout for effective levers that are going to help move things in a positive direction. One of the pieces that has now in a lot of ways come full circle is being able to embrace the notion of collective impact. So when I was getting into school and then district leadership, especially district leadership, back in my hometown of Milwaukee, this was over a decade ago now, I had heard about some really great work happening down the road in Chicago. And there was a term that they were embracing that actually came out of Stanford called collective impact. And really it's this notion that there are a lot of different partners around the community that are trying to move the needle, if you will, to make things better for students through education. But too often we're working, again, in silos. And so they started developing a methodologies and tactics around how can we collaborate better. And so I've been able to help not only my hometown of Milwaukee, kind of my second hometown of Baltimore, but many more communities around the country now with embracing this approach. And that really fires me up to see that we can move the needle when we work together.
That's interesting. Collective impact. So that requires a much deeper level of trust than is found in a lot of schools.
That's a really great point. That's a really great point.
I think that's one of the things we've run up against is sometimes there's not just silos, but they're pretty reinforced. I mean, they're in it to win it. And you can hear the language, right? You hear the language. It becomes us and them, yours and ours, right? And there's a confrontational almost language in the culture, right? And so getting schools to collaborate and work together, even educators in the same school, can sometimes be a very significant challenge, right? So what are some of the techniques that are incorporated into that collective impact? I'm fascinated by this.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Scott. So, one of the books I brought over here to my new office and on my new shelf is kind of an old classic. Stephen Covey. I think we talked about this last time you and I chatted. The notion of the speed of trust. And a lot of that has to do with, like you mentioned, folks sometimes guarding information, guarding data when they feel like it might make them or their organization look bad. One of the ways that I was able to build trust, and again, this is out of the collective impact playbook, again, first in Milwaukee and then in Baltimore and then in other places, is to be transparent and to say, hey, we don't have it all figured out. We do have some urgent facts here. We do have some concerning numbers. Here's what they look like, and how can we work together to improve these?
Okay, transparency. That's that's very vulnerable.
Yes,
right.
Absolutely.
In environments where, I guess I think you have found, I am sure, that that requires a level of leadership at the highest levels to be able to create the culture where we can trust. That's one of the things we've learned in our work with school growth is, man, if you don't have a leader who is cultivating that level of trust like you're talking about and is able to be consistent in expectations and defining sort of the behavioral norms, that's tough to sustain. Now, we've seen some sort of temporary glitches that have solved some of that, but man, that kind of leadership starts at the top. Yeah. And it's something that requires, like you were talking about, and the idea of trust. It requires a consistency, right? A predictability, and that type of preparation. Boy, that is a competency called wisdom. And so much of the time, we as educators, we value our knowledge, but the difference maker actually is our wisdom. And I think that's an imperative part of that whole methodology is being able to bring some people together where we can trust each other, we can let our guard down, we can share not only information, we can share feedback to each other as well, right? Because that's where it gets now it gets personal. Data is great, but when we're having to resolve personal conflict with each other, conflicts of expectations or conflicts of behavior, whatever, right? Yeah. Now it gets a little bit, a little sticky, right? That's true. So that's an interesting thing. I'm definitely interested in continuing the conversation with you around implementation of some of those strategies, because this is something that's needed, right? That's not just unique to, say, urban schools where I think you spent most of your time, but also in rural schools and in charter schools and in other all forms of education, right? Yes. Especially in higher ed. That's higher ed is one of the most difficult parts to build culture, because everybody thinks they're paid to be the smartest person in the room, right? And so it's building trust seems like it's a little bit harder. Have you noticed that?
I have, and we've talked with some universities that have said, because of different processes and committees and such, could take us as long as 3 years to roll out a new program. And we know that in this day and age, our students and our communities don't have that kind of time to wait around for a needed program to be implemented.
Yeah. So where does that start, though? I mean, how does a leader? Because you're asking for, I mean, transparency alone is asking for a level of vulnerability that a lot are uncomfortable with. Sometimes it's not that they just don't want to be found out. They also don't want. That's kind of their secret sauce, right? Is retaining that information. How do you? What are the first steps that you take with a team to start to build that level of trust?
Yeah, I think, often, of course, you do start small, and, finding those folks who do get it and do realize that it's only by being transparent that we can have some shared accountability and move things forward together.
Yeah.
But I think it's always that aspect of, how can we model that? How can we demonstrate that? How can we show that we're willing to do that? So sometimes it does take, one leader, one organization to be the first to lay out some of those facts that maybe have been hidden for some time.
Right.
Yeah, and sometimes that, of course, that starts in might start in one room, one meeting, and kind of be able to build from there.
Right. So are you connecting that at all? Obviously, one of the disciplines of what Peter Singe proposed in the fifth discipline around a learning organization, the 5 disciplines there was systems thinking.
Yes.
Right. I mean, so for collective impact to work, it seems like you'd have to, the foundational to that would be some professional development and an agreement on how there's consequences to our decisions, right? They're connected. Do you intentionally bring that part of the strategy into the leadership team of beginning to develop those learning organization disciplines?
Yes, absolutely. There's a phrase that often comes to mind, and I think is always important to keep in mind. Is it's from an author with a great book, great short read called Results Now, Mike Schmoker. And the quote is, "The answers are in the room." And so, to your point, Scott, often we may feel that we need to have all the answers, but when you bring folks into the room, oftentimes giving them a chance to share their respective expertise helps make sure that we all get the benefit of our collective expertise. And so, being able to open up some space for that, and also a lot of what we've been able to do kind of tactically over the years, and again, modeling and using this approach is to be able to say, here's our best understanding. We know there's some missing pieces. What are we missing, and who are we missing? Who's not at the table, and what's some information that we can add to get a more complete picture.
Yeah, that makes sense. So as you're visiting with different schools, what advice do you give to education leaders, and especially to those who may be new to that role? Maybe they've gotten moved up from a classroom role up to now a leadership role, administration, or maybe they're heading a school up for the first time as the chief administrator. What is the key sort of pieces of advice that you give them?
Yeah, I think a lot of it, again, ties with a big focus that we each and both have around helping realize folks' purpose and potential. And so just really making sure that they understand every staff member, every community member is coming to the table with some assets and some resources, and being able to see that. I think very often, especially newer school leaders have that sense, that pressure that they're forgetting that the metaphor from teacher to student, that you're not filling an empty cup, but you're really trying to build that curiosity, build on what's already there, what the students are bringing. Sometimes we forget about that, even when it comes to young professionals, our new professionals, or folks in the building, and feeling like we've got to build them up from scratch, not overlooking the fact that even if somebody is new to the profession, maybe they're already a parent. Or like you said, maybe they're from another profession. They've got some skills that they can share with the staff overall. And so being able to be open to learning from everybody in the room.
So tell me about this new thing that you started there, the Ready Institute. What's happening with that? And because this is something you're just recently begun. And so what are the goals, and where do you see it going?
Yeah, thanks so much. So this was a concept that was incubated a few years ago here at the universities at Shady Grove. So some folks may think of it as a commuter campus. So we have really all transfer students. We are partnered up with many of the University System of Maryland institutions. So folks often come and generally come with an associate's degree to finish a bachelor's and or graduate degree. But we're also a regional higher education center in that regard. And so what we're trying to do is make sure that the programs that we offer, we're only 25 years old, that they are continuing to be responsive to the industry needs and talent needs and opportunities here in the region, and making sure that we're staying up to date and seeing that we're providing a great value, the best value around.
Yeah, I love that. All right, so you've had a lot of successes. I mean, you've been able to study at some great places, and you're a writer, you're a researcher. You've been able to pour into the lives of so many educators. Among your many successes, of what achievement would you say you're most proud?
Yeah, thanks, Scott. I was thinking about that, and appreciate your sharing some thoughts about some potential discussion points. On the professional side, I do think, pushing through while juggling a lot to finish up that doctorate and kind of bring it to life is definitely what on the professional side. And, very much in parallel, I think it's so important to be mindful on the personal side. And so really happy to share that, I've been able to celebrate pretty recently my 25th wedding anniversary. And, that has given me a chance to continue to grow and mature as a man and as a leader, and I think that's what I'm most proud of.
That's awesome. Well, you obviously have some special gifts, and we appreciate you using your gifts, Rudy, for the benefit of educators, really all across the country, and especially the work that you're doing there in Maryland. There's obviously a desire from a lot of different people throughout the state of trying to improve the quality of the educational experience that's happening, and you get to be a part of that journey. And Maryland obviously is trying to lead out on some areas in strategy and in curriculum and other pieces. And so you're kind of in the middle of it all. And so really admire what you're doing there, and of course grateful to be able to work with you with what we're doing at Johns Hopkins as well. Yeah. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your commitment to be a great influence in the lives of so many educators, because like you, I love pouring into the lives of those who have that courage, and yeah, we're held to a higher standard, but maybe we can give them a little more joy. Right. Yes. Maybe there's just a way to lighten the load a little bit, and that's the passion certainly that we have in what we're doing through School Growth and Educators Fellowship, and we're looking forward to continuing to find ways to work together in what you're doing in your programs as well. So we'll continue that conversation certainly, and as we get a chance to share messages and stories with educators, one of the things we like to encourage them: hey, remember that your calling is to love and to lead. Right? Yes. We're not here to teach a curriculum by itself. We're not just dispensers of knowledge. We are inspirers of dreams. There's a heart and soul to what we do, and so we want to invite the educators that hear this is to say, hey, we care about you. And we're thankful for you, and thankful for you being willing to use your gifting to pour into the lives of other people to make a difference. But remember that even don't allow that burnout to happen. Keep that love in your heart. Keep that faith. Keep developing that belief in what you've been given by the Creator to do something really special. So just a quick reminder: love them and lead them, because that's our calling. Thank you, Rudy. Appreciate your time very much. Everyone else, we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for joining us for the Educators Among Us podcast, and for your courageous commitment to this noble calling. We get you and the challenges of this work. To stay connected with this community, be sure to subscribe to our podcast and weekly encouragement at educatorsamongus.com.